In the new and frightening world of addressable RGBs and the fans they live in, are you getting better performance for your money, or just something pretty to look at? Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. I've been shopping for quite some time for the perfect set of addressable RGB fans, something that fits the exact look I have in mind for a project. But as I've been working on my Threadripper 1900X workstation, a thought crossed my mind. When you spend money on addressable RGB fans, are you getting a better quality fan? Now, I've already spent a fair chunk of change trying and failing to find the right look, and always coming up a little bit short on the temps I was hoping to see. So, does the perfect RGB fan exist? Hopefully that's what we're going to find out today. I've collected 4 complete and very different sets of addressable RGB fans, and they're going to be pitted against each other in a battle to the death! Or, as I like to call it, installing them in a Corsair Carbide 280X. When I do reviews, I typically don't like to give out numbered scores, like, this case gives a 7 out of 10 pints, as invariably some viewer will take those numbers, compare them to another case that I reviewed in completely different context, and get all whiny. You gave the Inwin 303 a 7 out of 10 when it's so obviously an 8, and how could you possibly rate the Masterbox 5 higher than this case? It's so obviously trash. You're stupid and annoying and you drink too much. Unsubscribe. But in this instance, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll be judging each kit based on performance, looks, installation, software and customization, and overall value, and will be rated very arbitrarily out of 10 points for each category. These points are valid in these videos and these videos alone. No substitutions. Now this video is going to be part 1 of 2, starting today with air cooling performance. Now I know you guys hate multi-part videos, but don't worry, you're actually going to be getting a complete score for an air-cooled system today. Next week I'll be taking a look at those same metrics in a water-cooled system if that's more your jam. Now, without that out of the way, let's meet today's challengers. The least expensive in the competition today is the set made by LED Des, or something like that. These fans come in 2 different packages and an almost infinite number of brand names, so for that purpose I'm just going to call them Amazon Specials. They're available in packs of 3 fans, 2 addressable RGB strips, along with a controller and remote for $37. Or you can get a pack of 6 fans and a controller for $46. I purchased 2 of the former kits for a total of $74. Next up is XSPC and their RGB series fans, and the award for least clever name in this roundup. These fans are available in packs of 3 for $55 and rely on your motherboard or a third-party controller to have the proper RGB header and software to control them. You'll also want to pick up a 3-pin RGB splitter available from XSPC to connect all of them. The total for this package was around $127. Also entering the fray is Inwin with their Aurora fan lineup. These fans come in packs of 3 for $79, but also include the Aurora RGB controller, 2 addressable RGB strips, and all of the required cables. Quick spoiler though, these have the most unique method of cabling out of the lot of fans here. I got 2 of these kits for a total of $158. And finally, rounding out this roundup are the Corsair LL120 or dual light loop fans. A triple pack of these, along with the Corsair Node Pro controller, runs around $105, and is by far the most expensive kit here. Being as a single fan sells for $42, if you want 6 of these, your best bet is to purchase 2 of the 3 packs for a total of $210. How are we testing all these today? Each kit of 6 fans will be installed into the all-new Corsair Carbide 280X. The test bench will be mostly familiar to you, as it's the bulk of my gaming build from last month, which you can see right up there. It's a Ryzen 5 2600 with a stock Wraith stealth cooler, the only difference being I swapped out the GTX 1060 for a Sapphire RX 580 to move to a dual fan card. We'll start with idle temps, followed by running Unigine Heaven until all temperatures equalize. This will give us our gaming load temperatures. Workstation temps will be achieved by running IDA64 CPU stress test, again until temperatures equalize. Before each test, room temperature was measured and was found to be within 1 degree Celsius of each other. Once temperatures equalized inside the case, I captured data for 3 minutes inside hardware info and recorded the average temperature for both the CPU and GPU. Each result will be compared to my control set of fans, that being a 6-pack of Arctic F12s. If available, fan curves were set to stock until the CPU reached 60 degrees Celsius and then ramped up to 100%. So, shall we begin? Starting with our control test, we see our Ryzen 5 2600 idling at 35 degrees Celsius and our RX 580 just 2 degrees above ambient at 27. Heaven sees the CPU hit 62 degrees Celsius and the graphics card levels off at 76. Both of which are totally respectable numbers in this case, and on par with what I saw when I reviewed the case for Modder Zinc, which, if you want to see that review, you can click right up there as well. IDA64 stress test did just that, however, as the 2600 peaked at 80 degrees Celsius. Overall, very respectable numbers, but remember that above 60 degrees Celsius, all case fans were running at 100%, so this case was quite loud. But let's see what happens when we add a splash of color to our results. Our Amazon specials idled a few degrees warmer at 38 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 29 on the GPU. Our Heaven benchmark saw the CPU go 7 degrees higher than our control, but the GPU ran 4 degrees cooler. A bit of an odd result there. IDA64 was not kind though, reaching 85 degrees Celsius. No thermal throttling was observed, but that is the max operating temperature for the CPU, so if it wasn't throttling, it was really close. As far as installation, these fans require only a single cable running back to the controller that supports up to 10 fans and 2 addressable RGB strips, which sounds amazing. But here comes the very long list of downsides. First and foremost, while the RGB controller does power the fans, they simply spin. There's no speed control to be found here, even manually, let alone plugging in a header on your motherboard to set a fan curve. These are definitely quiet, but there's no real performance behind them. RGB control is pretty limited here as well. Sure, there's close to 30 presets, but nothing that really grabbed my attention and said, that is the look that I need for this case. The only single color choices seem to be in red, with spirals and chasers, but every other effect appears to be of the unicorn diarrhea variety. It's either every color in an endless loop of rainbow-colored excrement, or maybe a soft blue while chasing lights slowly change color around it. They look okay, but with no true color selection and absolutely zero customization, these are not going to score well here. Oh, and the controller uses Molex for power, which should result in an instant disqualification. My contest, my rules. On to the XSPC RGB series. Idle temps were on par with our control, seeing the CPU at 37 degrees and the GPU at 28. Gaming got some very impressive numbers, beating the control on both the CPU and GPU at 59 and 72 respectively. Same story in IDA64 with a temp of 79. Installation though is a bit tricky here, and not every motherboard is going to be compatible with the XSPC kit, including this one. You see, addressable LEDs are different from the standard one color at a time RGB strips. Standard RGB uses a 4-pin connection, sending 12-volt power on one line and PWM for R, G, and B channels on the other. The higher the pulse, the brighter the color on that channel. Addressable RGBs, however, work in a 3-pin cable, with a 5-volt, a ground, and a data line, making all the magic happen. Each LED knows where it's at in the sequence thanks to a microcontroller before each one, lights up the light accordingly, and then passes the signal on to its neighbor. Make sure to check XSPC's website to see if your motherboard is compatible with this kit before purchasing. But like I said, this board isn't compatible, but my water-cooled rig will be, so don't worry about that. So how did I test the looks on the air-cooled system? Well, I hooked up my Creative AE5 sound card, and by hacking together a cable to send the correct signal. Honestly, it worked gangbusters. Just pay no attention to the project board wiring strung across my case. After all that, each fan requires a 3-pin RGB connection to the XSPC hub, and either a 3 or 4-pin fan connection to actually make them spin and move air. So you're likely going to need to pick up a PWM fan splitter and run them off of that. And that's not the last time you're going to hear that in this video. In all, it's going to require 2 SATA power leads, and it also means finding a central location in your case where all of the fan cables can reach both controllers. Once lit up, these fans are amazingly good looking. If you're a fan of motion effects, but not necessarily the ambient lighting and underglow from the ricer culture, these fans may be for you. The individual LEDs are fairly bright, but the light really stops at the fan and doesn't give your case that bright glow that most RGB critics hate. Just a bit of motion when looking inside. Software-wise, there's not much to judge here from XSPC as I was using creative software, but I will say I was able to specify the number of LEDs in the sequence and dial in a custom effect very easily. I created what looks like a fiery ring starting from yellow and fading to black that I think looks great. There's also a few dozen preset effects to choose from in here as well. In Win Aurora. I've actually ran these fans for the past few months in my Threadripper workstation, and these are the fans that started my whole line of questioning and led me to the countless hours of testing all of these kits. We see numbers here that are roughly on par with the Arctic kit, at least at idle. And remember, that kit costs just $20 for a 5-pack. The CPU is sitting at 38 degrees Celsius and the GPU at 27. We do see an improvement in gaming with the Ryzen 5 reaching 62 and the RX 580 at 72, beating out the control by 4 degrees each. The margin is a little smaller under full synthetic load, with the CPU testing 81 in IDA64, just 2 degrees under our control. Installation is a bit complicated here, and if I were to score it twice, I'd give it a 10 and a 0. On one hand, the controller fits into most 2.5-inch hard drive sleds and has 4 cables coming out of it. One to a USB header for data, one to a PWM header for fan control, one to SATA for power, and one cable to connect to the first fan. Each fan is daisy-chainable with an in port and an out port. Well, that sounds fantastic, I can hear all of you thinking right now, but there's a catch. When I was running these in Threadripper, I plugged into fan 1, that led to fan 2, and to fan 3, then I strung a long cable down to fan 4, which connected easily to 5 and 6. However, all of my fans had the in-out ports in the proper locations to be able to daisy chain them. In the case of the Corsair 280X, the fans on the top and bottom are in the same orientation, sucking in from the bottom and out through the top. The fans on the front of the case, however, are sucking in from the front and are rotated from the rest, meaning the in-out ports are in the wrong orientation. It took a great deal of planning to get them all connected so each fan was in the proper position, which, as you'll find out in software, is pretty important. Fan 2 needs to be directly between fans 1 and 3, or some of the effects won't make visual sense. Also, if you're going to install RGB strips, those can only come at the end of the daisy chain. You can't run fan RGB strip fan, as the strips use only a 3-pin cable instead of the 6-pin that the fans use. And the strips only come with 2 cables, one to install the first strip to a fan, and 1 extension. So I hope the end of your line makes a good spot to install both RGB strips. So, setup was difficult and took the most time planning out of any other install. But once it's done, it's the cleanest cabling job of the bunch with the least mess going back to the controller. So like I said, it's both best and worst. Uh-oh. Luckily I've got almost another half a beer here. We might have been in trouble. Software-wise, these are controlled through the Win Aurora software, and it's both here and in looks that I'm a little bit let down. Performance is fine, and installation difficulty I can deal with, but when Win sells these fans in kits of 3 with 2 LED strips and says just buy another kit to keep things going, I expect their lighting effects to make sense in those configurations. But that, unfortunately, is not the case. The patterns here look pretty good with 3 fans and either 1 or 2 LED strips hooked up. Everything makes sense, and while there's only 4 LEDs in each fan, they do provide a decent amount of brightness to your case. There's a bit of motion, although it's much less fluid than any other kit I've tested here. Where I have the problem is if you're running 6 fans or more. All of the patterns and effects, with the exception of the Aurora Borealis effect, repeat after the 5th fan. So if you're wanting motion in your case, you can pretty much forget it. The whole thing is just distracting, and combined with the fact that there's only 4 LEDs in each fan, the whole system just seems disjointed to me. And there's absolutely no customization options in the software either. You get 7 colors and a set of pre-programmed patterns, and you better darn well like it. Looking for something else? It's probably best you look elsewhere. And finally, it's the Corsair Node Pro and the LL120 fans. Well, the most expensive fans here today at nearly $35 each. Back that up with the best performance and lighting effects. Well, idle temps were slightly higher than our control here, with our Ryzen 5 2600 sitting at 39 degrees Celsius and our Sapphire RX 580 at 29. Gaming performance was slightly worse on the CPU than the control, reaching 66 degrees Celsius, but beating out the GPU by 2 at 74. Unfortunately, IDA64 struck again, staying just under throttle levels at 83 degrees. So, not great. Manageable, but not great. Installation-wise, yeesh. Corsair has probably the worst cable management in the lineup today, and I say that after complaining about the InWin fans a little bit. For starters, each fan has 2 cables, much like the XSPC set, which I can forgive. The Node Pro controller has a SATA power connection and plugs into an internal USB 2.0 header for its data. It also has a 3-pin connection that goes to an RGB fan hub. That RGB fan hub requires its own SATA power connection and connects to each fan through their 3-pin RGB headers. You'll also likely need a PWM fan splitter, which will take a third SATA power connector and also connect to a fan header on your motherboard, as well as a PWM cable running to each fan. That's 17 separate connections to be made, and that's without plugging in any RGB strips. Those picky about cable management may want to avert your eyes now, because honestly, it's a horror show. Remember, the Amazon Special fans require just 8 cables, including power and an RGB strip. Although then again, I prefer they required a 9th, because then I could regulate fan speed. So once this rat's nest is properly connected, we can finally start talking looks, and oh, baby do these look good! Corsair, I'm sorry I yelled at you. This kit manages something that none of the other kits can, and that's true individual addressing of each LED. In Corsair's Link, or IQ software, which by the way, Corsair, decide what you want me to use and stick with it, you have 2 separate pieces of software that have different features and are available to control the same kits. All of the preset effects are very well programmed here, and seeing an effect start at one end and work its way all the way around your case to the other end is pretty neat. Customization was very easy as well, with point and click or drag and highlight both working to perfection. Almost. Almost, because nearly every time I rebooted the computer, the Corsair service would start freaking out and the lights would start flickering between their default rainbow animation and whatever was set by IQ or Link. The result is an eye-twitching strobe that only goes away if you kill the Corsair service and let the Windows application recover it. Once it's back up and running, these fans go back to looking their absolute best. And of course, fan performance is still behind the set of $20 Arctic fans, so scoring here should be interesting. Bonus beer? Bonus beer. And we are done testing! Is this video long enough yet? Editing Jeff, would you please show the temperatures on a graph? And now the Heaven benchmark numbers? Now the out of 64 numbers. So, drumroll please, let's see how I scored these kits. I figured the average fan that you buy should score a 7. So the Arctic Control scored a 7 across the board. If a fan performed worse than the Control, it scored worse than the Control. That's how a Control works. Then a result that shocks no one. Bringing up the rear is the LED Des Amazon Specials. I had much higher hopes for this, and my value score actually had these as the second highest score, but that's due to these being the only LED kit available for under $120, with the kit costing just $74, or even $46 if you don't want the LED strips. These fans have the unfortunate pleasure of not only performing the worst, but having no fan control, no software control, and no customization options. While the value is scored at an 8.6 out of 10, it averaged just 6.02 each round, and that's not going to get the job done. Fourth place goes to the Win Aurora set. Performance-wise was basically a dead heat with the Control, where these loss was actually in the software. Now, there are some limitations looks-wise with these fans only having 4 LEDs per fan, but having no customization options and not having your pre-programmed patterns expand past the first kit of 3 fans really hurts this kit here. I like the fans, and they performed well as fans, but not enough to justify the second highest price tag of the roundup. Plus, anecdotally, besides the Amazon Specials, these were not up to par construction-wise with the XSPC or the Corsair. The plastic feels much more brittle, and gaps open up at the seams even when just screwing these into your case. In third place, we've got the Corsair LL120 fans and the Node Pro lighting kit. Customization and looks were absolutely top-notch here. The problem was they performed worse than a $25 kit of fans. And at $210, yes, they're the best looking of the bunch, but they need to keep up in airflow and cable management, and these were among the worst in both of those metrics. It's kind of like a football star who forgets he needs to go to school like everyone else, but you can't help but watch him while he's on the field. In second place is actually the Arctic Control fans with a score of 38, as how can I give the second best temperature recorded a value of only average? My contest, my rules. For around $25 for 6 fans, if you don't care about RGB, these are a fantastic value with excellent airflow, and black frames with white blades should go well with almost any color scheme. In first place overall, the only fan kit to beat the Control set overall is the XSPC RGB series. Not only did it have the best temperature of any kit tested, it also scored well in looks and customization, even if XSPC is relying on third-party software here. Your mileage may vary in controlling the lights, and you do need a compatible controller, but there's no denying these are some excellent fans with some great looks. And that is finally going to do it for me today, but before I go, are you interested in picking up a new skill or improving on what you already know? Check out Skillshare.com, an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, photography, business, technology, and more. Anyone can join the millions of members in the community to learn new cutting-edge skills, network with peers, and discover new opportunities. Click the link down in the video description to start your free 30-day trial. Thank you everyone for watching this rather long video. I hope it was as informative and fun for you as it was for me. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, hit me up on Patreon, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell so you don't miss any new thing on this channel, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.